capacitors and output transformers have been replaced.
Before you say, I'm sure there are some lovely lakes in Nebraska. You know what I mean? I mean beach like ocean.
Century is and with
joy that cannot be expressed.
Doesn't sound bad. The speaker might have a little bit of a rattle in it. There are a few issues that have to be taken care of here. One being the dial point of 6 a little bit. Also, I have to restring this cord from here down to here, a secondary dial string, so that you can switch down to here, so you can turn it with this knob. Tone seems to have minimal effect, but does have a little bit of effect. So I think that'll be alright, or else we have to replace the wire there. So, oil this, replace that string, rewire that, and I think that'll be pretty much it as far as the chassis goes. Obviously the cabinet still needs some help, but good enough for now. Yeah, so as you can see, it's all back in the cabinet now. I replaced the battery wire and put some labels on here, like red for B+, A- is black. I didn't have, well, obviously you can't use a white marker on white tape, but I didn't have a yellow marker to do the original color there either. If you look at here, the original colors were red, yellow, black, and white. So I got black and red, but the other two not original. Anyway, it says on them what they are, like B+. It's supposed to say B+. Guess in the next video I have to work on my penmanship. Anyway, let's finish. This still flaking off all over me. You can hook this up now. Make sure that these don't touch. I'm probably going to have to figure something better than this out, but for now, this will work. Right thing? No. This is B-. That's A+. This must be B-. And that's A+. And this is B+. So, now hopefully we should be able to turn this around without shorting anything out. My antenna is a little bent. I guess it'll have to be that way. Clean over, but that's okay. Make sure that nothing shorts. Alright, so I'll put the knobs back on. You don't want to put the knobs on so far that they rub. That one doesn't seem to want to go on any further than that. Okay, so one of these should be volume. I think it's this one. And you notice, see how that window changed? If I turn it off, see how that turns to a gold? I can't really see it. Reflection, see the little window there? And then turns to red when it's on. It is on. Why do we have no sound? Is this? Yeah, my battery's not. See if we got anything on tuning. My battery's not making connection or something. Either that or I'm on the wrong band. That's bass. It's tuning. Yeah, let me check my battery connections. Okay, so this radio seems to have an interesting problem. Turn it on here. I'll let it play for a minute here. That was my music station. I don't know what it was doing. And there it goes. It just drops out like that. If I turn this switch, comes back for a second, then drops out again. It's almost like the oscillator is cutting out or something. So, seems like it takes a minute for it to warm up. Today it took longer than I expected. The last time I was playing with this, it didn't take that long. It seems like after it warms up a little bit, something is getting hot and cutting out. And it seems like there's a problem in the RF or oscillator circuit back here because it's affected by the band switch. Well, I can find my schematic. So, let's see if I can see. Right there we have a 4.7 meg. So that could be a problem, because these high value resistors are more likely to drift farther out of spec than the low value ones. So we have a 4.7 meg there. I think there was another one in here somewhere. This is going to be the oscillator tube right here. It's 22K, there's a 2.2 meg there. See if I can find the oscillator, or the switch here. This must be the answer. So there's one switch right there. Of course they don't, here we go. Here there's all the different contacts on it, and they're all numbered, and then you have to look all over here to find all the numbers. So there's one there, there, and there. This is going to be the oscillator section right here. See the coils in there. See number 13. Is that a 13? Shortwave oscillator maybe? Hard to tell. Anyway, 14 is probably the AM oscillator coil then. This number diagram is not complete. It doesn't tell you what all the numbers are. You just have 2, 3, I guess that's a 13, and a 12. What are the rest of the numbers? Oh, I guess you have to look at this list down here. So that's a 14 oscillator transformer. broadcast. So yes, so this is the oscillator section right in here, and that is the switch. Now I've already cleaned the switch multiple times, and if it was the switch, I doubt it would wait till it warms up and then cause a problem. And it's theoretically possible, but I doubt that would be it. Now we're looking at resistors like this, and I think there is one right up on that tube. So I was just going to show up, but right down in there you can see the green stripe. That is the, looks like a 4.7 meg on the base of that tube. We're going to see it's measuring 6.5 megs. So that's at least 2 megs high. So I'm thinking about changing that and see what kind of changes we get. There's also a 2.2 meg up there and a 2.2 meg here. So I might check the others as well and see how close they are. So the 2.2 meg in there measured 2.6, and this one down here measured 2.0. So I don't think those are really that bad. I'm going to change that 4.7 up there and see what that does. Okay, so out-of-spec resistor has been replaced. Let's see how it performs now. Yeah, it still has a problem. Okay, so other things that it could be is it could be a tube that's having an issue. It just... the tubes doesn't seem to have any effect. So either it could be a tube, or it could be one of these little domino capacitors. I think these are mica, and usually I don't think they go bad too often. Or it could be another one of these resistors here. I think that 2.2 meg wasn't that far out of spec, so I'd be surprised if it was that, and the other 2.2 meg was really close on spec. I could try changing those anyway, but I'd be surprised if that was the problem. There are a few other resistors up in here that aren't quite as high value. I can check those. But definitely something is still causing a problem. So I replaced a few resistors in here and didn't get any results. So it was just for fun checking voltages again, even though I'd already checked them before and they were fine. And as soon as I poked the plate, here, as soon as I poked that, it started working again. So we'll see how long it works, and if it goes out, I'll try playing with that terminal some more. Maybe it's got a close solder joint or something. It doesn't look cracked or anything, but just really strange. So we'll see what happens. Okay, so it finally petered out now, after running for a few minutes. So let's try and test that terminal and see what happens if we poke at it. It's this one. We have 80 volts there. Supposed to have around 80 or 90 volts there, so that seems okay. So when it stops working, we just have to short out the two pins. If I can get in here. This is going to be a problem. Because they're right down behind that coil down there. can see my, come on, the camera's not going to fit. See, that's on one of them. And if I short that out to the resistors, if I can, it's an awkward position. No, this is the one. Now I'm on the right one. That one right there is the plate pin. If I short that out to the resistors here, then it comes right back. I couldn't really get that, but the camera's not focusing on the right thing. I can't stick it in there either. Yeah, focus on that. See that resistor right there? Between the top of that resistor and the pin right down there. Shorting those out brings it right back. And now focus is messed up. There we go. So that's the problem. Well, not the problem. That's the symptom. The problem could be any number of things. So I guess I'll have to start investigating. Investigate the switch. Now let's see if I switch this. It does still do that, but for a much briefer time. So this only brings it back for like a second. The shorting out in there. Well, it only brought it back for a second that time too. Very interesting. Okay, more troubleshooting. It actually has nothing to do with the plate, it's just that grid wire right there. If I put my probe on it, see, I've got no voltage. If I short it out, so it's working. Now I've got 24 millivolts. So clearly voltage on that grid right there. Goodness, where did I go? This wire right here, which goes to that capacitor, goes to the grid, goes to that resistor, goes to that resistor, goes to that capacitor. Voltage on that wire is critical. See, right now it's at down to 0.5 millivolts. It stopped working. If I short it out, comes back. Now we're at 36 millivolts and rising. So when it has voltage on it, like 20 or 30 or 40 millivolts, that's when it works. When it drops down to 0, that's when it stops working. So could be one of these microcapacitors is leaking. Let's see, on the other side of that resistor there's a 0.0, okay, that's not a micro one, that's one I already replaced, to ground. So that one shouldn't be leaking because I already changed that one, that's a new Nichicon in there. We have this resistor. That resistor checked pretty close to tolerance. It's a 68K, it's at like 71 or something. That shouldn't be a problem. This line goes over to that capacitor, which goes over to the shortwave coil, which does have a ground connection over here. So if that capacitor is leaky, maybe that is the problem. I'm not using a shortwave right now, so theoretically I could clip that and see if that brings it back. So that should be this guy right here, because that should be the shortwave coil. Let's just double check. Shortwave oscillator looks like that, which is what that looks like. So let's just see what happens if we clip this wire right here. Nothing. See what happens if we short this out again. Can't get in there. Okay, now it's not working at all. Interesting. My meter shut off, stupid thing. What's the voltage here now? Nothing. So now this won't hold the voltage. See, it's at 0 before when I shorted it out. It stayed at like 20 or 30 millivolts. Now it's staying at 1. How is if we reconnect that? Let me just tap that back in real quick. Okay, the capacitor is tapped back in real quick. What's our voltage here? 1.3 millivolts. Not working. What happens if we short it out? Still not working. .4 millivolts. This is not connected properly. Let me try tacking that in a little bit better. Okay, so after I changed that capacitor out, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but I changed that 68K resistor down. It's all the way down there. You can't hardly even see it. I clipped it off and then put a new one up here between the same places, or the same wires. And this wire goes all the way down there, and that all the way down to that terminal right there. And that's also, you can even see that. I think you can. That terminal right there, and that's also where the 68K resistor went. So I just connected from the wire to ground, so that should be the same connection. Still can't get it to work at all now. This wire stays like right around 0 millivolts all the time, even after you short it out like before, when it went up to like 20 or 30 millivolts for a while and then worked, and then dropped back down and stopped working. Now it stays always at around 0 millivolts, and I can't get it to do anything at all. So I think I'm going to order a new tube to replace that, because the oscillator is not running. I got the scope out to check it and check the oscillator, and it's not running. And that's the side of the tube that is the oscillator. See, this is the oscillator network down here, so, and there's the little choke. So that's the plate. So variations beyond this choke feed back through the oscillator, which feeds back to, to the grid. And that's how your oscillator feedback works. So this part of the tube is the oscillator, this part would be the mixer. And the oscillator is not running. And so I think something is up with this tube, because all the components down here seem to check out. I mean, I checked the resistances on this, and this has continuity, so the coil should be okay. I mean, it was working before, so usually coils don't randomly start and stop working. Anyway, I did check that with the ohm meter, and it does have continuity through there, but the oscillator is not running. So I think I'm going to replace that tube, because everything else seems to be okay. I mean, that resistor has been replaced, that capacitor has been replaced, that resistor has been replaced, that capacitor has been replaced, that resistor has been replaced. So I don't think a failure on, well, that's not even in circuit. That capacitor isn't leaking or anything. That's a mica. I checked voltage here, it's 80 volts. Voltage there was like 50 millivolts or something, so that should be fine. That's a trimmer capacitor, and that's a trimmer capacitor. and that's the tuning capacitor. That's another trimmer capacitor. Here, this isn't even in circuit. This coil is switched out. That's a shortwave coil. So I mean, everything basically here has been eliminated except for the tube. So we're going to change that tube. Okay, I replaced this XXB tube here, which is the mixer oscillator, and it seems to be working now. Got it running for a few minutes here, and it seems like it's going to be fine. Also, shortwave seems to work now, which it did not work before. Switch over to shortwave, turn up the volume a little bit. It's the middle of the day, so we probably won't get that much more shortwave, but probably at least one station there. It's the same station. Okay, it's one with shortwave station now. I'm not sure what shortwave band this is, but it does work. Gets at least one station. Probably get more when it's dark out. Push back to AM. Turn the volume down a little bit so I don't blow myself away.
For students in grades K through 12.
In the 10 o'clock hour. I failed because
Alright, seems to be changing that tube seems to have solved the problem. So I'll get this back in the cabinet. The cabinet will need to be refinished. I'm still debating what I want to do about that, but for now we can put this back in the cabinet. Okay, so we got our chassis back in the cabinet. Got our batteries hooked up back there. Flip this around. And hopefully should be good to go.
Who made the covenant with you, and I will give you this land. And Abraham says, Lord, you know, it's been a long time since you've...
Going forward, the vagina will now be called the front hole. The anus will be called the...
What we really need is better quality.
called the upper hole.
pray for this nation in which we live, for a
is clear. That is that Abraham, in this moment of weakness,
Gary?
a 15-year-old girl tells police that a man groped her in the store last Thursday. And investigators say with...
Sounds pretty good. Now the batteries for this should last pretty long because these are low current filaments, only like tens of milliamps I think are the filament draw on these. In contrast to the older radios I've put on, like from the 1920s, where the current draw on those filaments was hundreds of milliamps, and those will drain your batteries pretty fast. But batteries should last a decent amount of time on these. And of course, the high voltage batteries, like the 90 volt ones, will last a real long time on both the 1920s versions and this version. So, kind of interesting that Philco actually made these farm radios all the way up into the late 40s. So apparently enough of the country was still unelectrified back then that there was still a market for these up into the late 40s. But that's about it for electrical on this. The main failures were the output transformer was bad. We replaced the capacitors, but it probably would have worked with the old ones in there. But I like to replace them just for peace of mind, and usually it helps the performance a little bit. Like, it'll work with your capacitors in, but once you change them, it's just a little bit better. Anyway, and also the one tube was bad. The oscillator was not oscillating, and changing the tube changed that. So that other XXB was something wrong with the part of it that internal short or something. Well, not really short because the voltages were all fine. It just wasn't oscillating. Changed the tube, now it works fine. So I guess that's about it for now. I will have to finish this at some point. I'm not sure when I'm going to do that. But it does work. Also have a bass switch here. Doesn't seem to make a lot of difference. All that does is switch different capacitors in and out of the audio amplifier circuit. And I did change those capacitors too because I think there was some voltage across them. Doesn't seem to make much difference, so oh well. It plays. So hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching. I just put a quick coat of lacquer on this thing. I scraped off the lacquer on the top and the sides, so it was basically flaking off anyway. Scraped a little bit here since that was flaking off. I sanded the front a little bit and just brushed a quick coat of lacquer over the whole thing. Also touched up a bit of in here where some of the black lacquer was falling off. It actually doesn't look too bad. This is just temporary until I get time to do a proper top coat. The labels here and also this grain trim is just painted on. That's part of the lacquer coating on here. So I wanted to leave the front lacquer on to preserve that. And it actually looks okay. The cracks in the lacquer almost look like wood grains, so I think it looks alright. Sometime in the future I'll just have to scuff it off and put a top coat on or something. Also have to replace the trim. There's supposed to be trim going across here and down the sides. For some reason that's missing on here. I don't know what happened to it. So that'll have to be replaced at some point. And I think that'll be about it for this one.